All right, everyone, welcome back into another live edition of the Patriots Beat podcast here on the CLNS Media Network, presented by all of our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks, Game Time, and Factor Meals. It is Brian Hines back, as always, with Alex Barth to break down the football game that occurred Thursday night between the Patriots and the Jets. It was a knockout punch by New York, 24-3. In MetLife down there again Thursday night in primetime. Kind of the first game of the year that the Patriots just didn't show up. And it was a short week. I know they were banged up, but kind of a disappointing performance just off the top there for a game that I think we both thought were winnable and that they might be able to keep close. It just wasn't good enough offensively. Aaron Rodgers had his way defensively. Surprise, surprise. We're going to talk a lot about quarterbacks and offensive line, but just big picture, like, where did you think? Like, the energy seemed low. It just wasn't a good showing all throughout the roster.
Yeah, that was an ugly game. And I guess my big takeaway was about the line. But like, if I had to give a big picture summary of that game, after 2 encouraging weeks, and the first 2 weeks were encouraging, every single concern, fear, doubt that we had about this Patriots team coming into the season, like going back to the start of camp, all the things we talked about at the start of camp, the offensive line, the coaching being new, the defense lacking playmakers, like all of this came back up and was shoved right in your face for 60 minutes of football, 40 of which the Jets possessed the football, over 40 of which the Jets possessed the football, which is insane. It was the second most in terms of yardage. It was the second most lopsided Patriots game since 1986. The only other one was in the Cam Newton year. We're going to talk about Cam Newton a few times on this show. That's how rough this game was. Not in the sense of bringing him back, but using that year as a frame of reference. Every single concern people had with this team, all the reasons, big and little, pointed to, big and reason that people pointed, all the reasons, big and little, that people pointed to as to why this team would come up short and potentially be in the running for a top 5 pick. We played all the hits last night. They were all on display last night. Did we really miss anything? Even the special teams had its issues last night. Except Bryce Behringer, but nobody doubted Bryce. Nobody was saying, Bryce Behringer is going to prevent the Patriots from winning
games. We left the summer also saying, like, he was one of their best players on the practice field. So
they played the hits. They played the 4-13, could be another top 3 pick. Tell me more about Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks hits. That's what that game was last night. That doesn't mean that's what every game's going to be for the rest of the season. That doesn't mean there's not going to be another game like that this season. I think there will be more games like that. I don't think it will be every game, but I think there will be more. But that's what that was. That game was all your worst fears, doubts, and concerns about this team shoved into your face.
Yeah. I mean, there are tons of crazy stats now. And you mentioned, like, the time of possession. Drake May played 31% of the snaps, and he played 1 drive. That just, like, the offense was just horrible, and that encapsulates it a lot. So we'll talk about the offensive line. We'll get into Drake, how this affects Drake and Jacoby. But one more thing, like, big picture game-wise, did you like their offensive game plan? Because they talked all week about, short week, but they talked a lot about pushing the ball downfield, getting these receivers involved. And it seems like they almost tried to do that a little bit too much. They ran the ball twice on their first 2 possessions. They tried to really they didn't really try to set up the play action. They were just going off the play action. And then I think Ramondre only finished with like 6 carries. Van Pelt said this morning, in hindsight, he would have rather started with the run to help set up the pass. So how did you kind of feel about their game plan going into that? Did you think they tried to overcorrect maybe too much to try to get these pass catchers involved and not lead on the run game, which has been kind of their big success here for the first 2 weeks of the season?
So I like the theory behind it. I'm not going to lie about that. I like the theory behind it in the sense that Van Pelt said this morning, we run the ball well the last 2 weeks. We wanted to create play action off it. We knew we needed more explosive plays. That's how we were going to do it. That whole line of thinking makes sense to me. What kills me is, all right, so, and he kind of talked about this morning. He said, we came right out with play action because we ran the ball well the last few weeks. The Jets weren't on the field the last few weeks when you were running the ball. And especially this team that you can beat up with the run, you got to lure them in first. And I get they didn't run a lot of offensive plays. That's not an excuse. It's part of the problem. They didn't have a ton of time to set things up. But maybe if they had dedicated, put more focus into setting things up, they would have had more time and gotten the payoff on the back end. So the like umbrella approach, the idea behind what they did makes sense to me. And I like it. And I think that I wouldn't lose track of that if I'm them. The actual execution of taking that philosophy and implementing it in the game is where they came up short.
Yep. Especially against the Jets defense that was just getting gashed on the ground, right? Like maybe, I didn't love it there looking at it. But all right, let's talk about the offensive line because that was, of course, the big point. Jacoby Brissett was just under fire all game, and credit to him for getting up still after some of those hits. But he was under pressure. What did it end at? 56.5% of his dropbacks?
Anywhere from I've seen anywhere from the three numbers I've seen between PFF, Next Gen, and I forget where the third one was from, but I've seen 48, 52, and 56. I've been using Next Gen.
Yeah.
Next Gen had them at 56, which is the highest pressure rate for a Patriots quarterback in a game since Cam Newton in week 14 of the 2020 season. They also lost that one 24-3. That was against the Rams. But yeah, that was, if it looked as bad as anything you remember in recent history.
Because it was.
Yeah, it was. Like right from the jump, too. Honestly, I thought it was going to be higher. There was one point in that game where not Brissett's pressure rate, because they're calculated differently. Brissett's pressure rate is how many times he's pressured. The offensive line pressure rate is how many pressures they allow per, snap, per drop back. There was one point in that game where the offensive line's pressure rate was over 100% because they were allowing multiple pressure. And I mean, I think it was like 5 plays in. It wasn't, but they were allowing multiple pressures per snap on the first few snaps.
Yeah. I mean, there were, and I know the Jets pass rush is talented and they've been dealing with injuries,
very good,
but it's still like picking up stunts. They couldn't pick up a stunt all night. The first third down of the game, you have Mike Onwenu, who should be like one of your best linemen. And we can talk about if he's playing out of position maybe, but like a free rusher right up the middle comes right at him. And Jacoby Brissett has to bail like instantly. So the free rushers, the picking up line games, like Gerard Mayo said, it's not about just doing it. It's about knowing what to do as well. And you're not seeing these guys knowing what to do all the times. And that extends. I know they had 2 rookies in there, but that's extending to, like, again, Mike Onwenu, who's making plays like that. So, I mean, David Andrews said, like, the pressure rates just aren't sustainable. Like, that is an absurd amount of pressure. And I know the first 2 weeks, I think Jacoby was like at 43, 44%, which was way too high already. And then to be anywhere about around 50% in one game is absurd. And I mean, that's what happens. Like, he's going to finish with 98 yards of passing. They're not going to be able to get the offense moving as well. There was the one play, like, he should have hit on the crosser to Austin Hooper off play action, but it's tough to put any of this blame on Jacoby right now. And I know that, again, there's 1 or 2 of those plays that you like him to hit, but like, he's under fire. It seems like every time he drops back, and it's impossible to get this offense moving right now with that type of pressure.
Well, so this goes back. I just want to really quick backtrack to something you just said about, the Jets front is good. And I don't think every game will be this. They're still allowing over 40% pressure rate. I think they've allowed over 40% pressure rate in all 3 games. The general consensus is anything over 30 isn't great. When you get over 35, you're really in danger territory. So the fact they're still over 40, that game was extreme. It honestly kind of reminds me of the Eagles joint practice. Remember how lopsided that was? And we kind of came away saying the alarming part isn't that this is just what it's going to be. It's that a defense can do that to them, and that the floor is that low. And this was that coming back. What was your other point there?
Just like, it's tough to put a lot of the blame on Jacoby.
Yeah. So, I mean, was he great last night? No, he wasn't. He didn't really have much of a chance. He did miss that one throw. Jacoby Brissett being good or not kind of isn't the point here. Because Jacoby Brissett, and I say this like, I don't mean to dump on Jacoby Brissett. I'm not trying to do that. But Jacoby Brissett is not part of what this team is building. And beyond being a mentor for Drake May, and the season's all about seeing what you're building moving forward. So Jacoby Brissett wasn't great. Jacoby Brissett was kind of who I know Jacoby Brissett is. That I'm not going to react to that. It's more put Drake May back there. How much changes? And we'll talk about Drake May. Put Drake May back there beyond a 56% pressure rate. How much can he really change as a rookie from what happened last night? Not much. And I know people will say, well, he drove the ball down the field at the end of the game and he accounted for like 40-something% of the yards. The Jets had their backups in. They were playing off. That was not an engaged defense at that point. So it's not me even saying Drake May's bad. It's just, and we can kind of, I don't know if there's more you want to get to on the offensive line, Brian, but I just think this is naturally where this conversation goes. What needs to happen where you can go to Drake May and not be hanging him out to dry? I get the offensive line's never going to be great this year. It might not even be good. This is still something they're going to need to build over the next couple seasons. And by the way, I just put up a column on this on 985thesportshub.com. There needs to be a baseline. There simply needs to be a baseline that is better than last night. And I think they can get there. That's the thing. With last night, it to me is not necessarily reflective of... Last night to me is more about what happened in the offseason. Like, they're this depleted week 3 with some guys they were counting on who are already probably backups. And you had both tackles playing out of position. You had one starting guard as a rookie who has been up and down. You had another starting guard who had began the year on the practice squad. And all 5 projected starters were hurt coming into the game. All 5 were on the injury report.
They ended the game with 2 waiver claims on their left side. That was their ending offensive line.
Like, let's say Vidarian Lowe's out, misses another week, and Caden Wallace has to miss a week. Your starting left tackle is probably DeMontre Jacobs, who made his NFL debut last night. He's played 14 snaps. They were all last night. I can't do my rant about him not being primarily left tackle because all 14 of those snaps came at left tackle last night. You're putting that potentially opposite Bosa in 9 days in San Francisco. You can't subject Drake May to that in his first career start. Maybe a little down the road once he's a veteran and he's seen some things, then you ask him to carry more of the weight on his shoulders. Not right now. That's just asking for trouble. So to me, last night was more about just the way they failed to address the offensive line in this offseason, in previous off seasons. And this is what it's going to look like when you don't invest in important positions.
Yeah. So I guess the question now is like, where do they go? Because no one is coming. It is up to them if you want to, flash back to last year very quickly and get those hoodies out of the locker room. But this is kind of the personnel they have. And we've talked a lot, like there's not just a left tackle out there that you can go and grab. Although maybe at this point they might just have to go grab a Donovan Smith out of like pure necessity. If some of these injuries that piled up are like serious, like that's not a great solution, but that might just be what they have to do. So where do you think this offensive line kind of goes? Because, Caden Wallace got hurt last night. Michael Jordan got hurt last night. I know they have some extra time here. You hope maybe City So can get back in the lineup, but we've talked, is Mike Onwenu still best out at tackle? Like, I think you'd like to move him to guard, but then you even have another right tackle you can put out there. So like, what is your path here? And injuries will help, like if you can get Vidarian Lowe and you can get City So back, but what do you think the path is here to try and get that offensive line back up to like basically a playable rate here early on in the season?
So this is where I think people are going to get annoyed. You don't play Drake May. You don't play him right now. I get it. It's the NFL. Guys get hit. He's going to have to take hits, and he is. And there's inherent risk that's going to come with him playing. You can mitigate that risk. You're not putting him back there right now. You're not simply subjecting him to the usual bumps and bruises that come with playing quarterback. He is going to be under fire at a rate higher than any of his peers, rookie or otherwise, as he's managing his first NFL starter starts. The spot they're in right now, they kind of just have to ride this out for the next week or two while guys get healthy. I don't think they have another option. You might have to put Demontre Jacobs out there. You might have to put Zach Thomas out there. Guys are going to be playing out of position, and you just got to kind of grit your teeth and get through it. So that's the shortest term plan. What the short-term plan should be, and by short-term, I mean over the next month. Get healthy, and I've said this. When is it time to start Drake May? When you know who your best five are and you have them on the field. I think we know the Patriots' best five at this point, even though I don't think this unit of five has played together, at least not in this alignment. It's just the best five. I think it's kind of just by default, but tell me if you disagree, Brian. Their best five should be Vidarian Lowe at left tackle. Left guard, you can still have a competition. City So, Layden Robinson, Michael Jordan. I think those are all, you can continue having those guys battle it out. You'd meet the threshold for me for best five.
Yeah.
But one of those guys at left tackle. So Vidarian Lowe, I think City So is the best option, so we'll call it City So. David Andrews, Michael Onwenu at guard, right guard, and then Caden Wallace at right tackle. They've just got to somehow get to that. If you can get that on the field and see what that group of five looks like, I think they might be representative. Or they're going to be the best chance the Patriots have of being representative. And then you go from there, and you hope you just build some chemistry, and at the very least, you get some consistency, and you can kind of game plan and scheme around what you're working with. But I think that has to be the goal right now, is setting up a situation where you have those five guys in those spots. And the problem is it's not as simple as plugging and playing guys as they come back from getting hurt, because you maybe can't move Caden Wallace to right tackle if Vidarian Lowe's still out.
Yeah.
Because they don't have another left tackle on the roster unless they're suddenly more comfortable with Demontre Jacobs. So now you can't kick Mike Onwenu back inside because you don't have your right tackle. So there's all these moving parts to it. But I think that needs to be the goal, is to get back to that five.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be their best five. That's five guys at their natural position too, which would be nice. Right. And then you'd assume kicking Onwenu back inside, and if you have City there, your interior, which we talked a lot about in the summer, like your interior will be solid, and that will be at least a step forward if you have those three. And then you hope Caden Wallace can maybe settle in at his natural position. And then we've seen Vidarian Lowe. Like, there's still some times where he'll just lose right away, and you're like, damn, like the losses are bad, but he is a little bit better than last year. He's probably your best option at left tackle. So you hope you can get that five out, and then you can start talking about maybe Drake May, because I'm with you. Like, Drake May, if you play football, you're going to get hit, and you can't baby him, right? He's got to play at some point this year, but just being behind like a historically bad offensive line, I think someone had it since like 2000. Chad Graff might have posted it this morning on Twitter. Since like 2006, the pressure rate through 3 games is like the 15th worst of all time. So it is like historically bad up there. That's what you don't want Drake May behind. You hope they can find the 5 here and kind of settle it down. And then maybe if you're looking at that 30 to 35%, that's when you say, okay, Drake, you can get in there now. You're not taking an absolute beating 50% of your dropbacks, right? It's settled down a little bit, but you just have to find a way to get to that 5 and then hope that the results show with that unit out there finally.
So I can tell you the number I had going back to 2018. It's the second, if they were to continue this rate for a full season, right? Which right now they're at 44.8 for the season, 44.8% pressure rate. If that were to play out for the course of the season, it would be the second worst pressure rate in the NFL since 2018. The only one that's worse is last year's Bears, who are 44.9. So you're talking about 0.1%. So you're basically talking about the worst pass blocking offensive line in the NFL in the last 5 years is what they're on pace to be. Now, I don't think they'll be that because, again, Caden Wallace shouldn't stay at left tackle. You're good. Mike Onwenu should be moved back inside to right guard. Like there are areas where you can improve this on the margins. The big improvement isn't coming. The big improvements are playing Louisiana Monroe and I think like Mississippi State this weekend.
I think so.
UCLA. No, UCLA are playing Louisiana
Yeah.
Monroe and UCLA. And I'll even throw you a bone, Brian. Your boy Iracy's playing Iowa. So we can start throwing. I've had a number of people tell me I should include him in there. And what the hell? That's where the big improvements are. Those guys aren't coming, right? Nobody's coming. It's up to us. There are minor improvements you can make. You just got to get healthy so you can get there and then get that rate down. Like, I don't remember if it was you I was texting last night or somebody was like, all right, so then when do you play Drake May? Because just saying the offensive line is better doesn't mean anything. They could allow, right? So they allowed, what was it last night? Like 13 pressures on 26 dropbacks or something.
Something like that.
They could allow 12 on 26 next week. And it's better. Can you sustain a pressure rate under 40%? And that's not a big ask. In the last 5 years, there were 17 teams that finished the season with a total pressure rate under 40%. Even the last 2 years, I think in 2021 and 2022, if I remember correctly, in neither of those years, the Patriots had a game where the quarterback was pressured over 40% of the time. So qualifying quarterbacks. I think Mac Jones technically was in the 3-pass game, but we're not counting that. Can you get to there? And it's not a big ask, but can you get to there? And then we can have the conversation. I do think they can get there. I do think they can get to the point where they go from, I looked it up last night. Like if they get under 40%, they'd rank 25th in the NFL. So can they be a top 25 unit is kind of my point. I think they can get there.
Okay. A little more offensive line and Drake May talk, but very quickly before we do that, Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members, and it's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. We have a Patriots free weekend now, so the football weekend is ahead of you. You guys can create a fantasy sports lineup on Prize Picks. And if you want a free win, 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. So there's 2 weeks of free W's left. Don't miss this deal on Prize Picks in September. And there's nothing worse than someone you pick going down with an injury. So Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, your lineups on Prize Picks are still live. So download the Prize Picks apps today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Okay. On Drake May, just his debut. I know Gerard Mayo, after the game, kind of was non-committal about a starter. This morning, he said, Jacoby's our guy. So as you would expect, right, with this offensive line play, it's still going to be Jacoby. But just Drake May, first thoughts, live action. Again, it's late in the game, but just did you have any thoughts on how he looked kind of in his first NFL action there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what you expect for what the setting was. Came in late against a good defense, made a couple plays. The 4th and 10 throw, I thought was that's a plus throw. I know he scrambled twice. One of them, I think it was like an 8-yard gain. Stood out to me as more than just essentially taking what the defense gave him, and I think he created some yards himself there. Did almost get picked on his first throw. Maybe could have done a better job protecting himself. So some ups and some downs. I'm not ready to proclaim his whole career off of that one drive, but he didn't look out of place. And I think that's the biggest thing you look at there is like, all right, yeah, he's not totally panicking. He looks comfortable. There's still, technical things they need to work on, and it's just tough to come in that spot, but you hope he's not coming in every game for the final drive down 24-3, and that we get to a point where he's actually starting some of these games and able to get in a rhythm.
Yeah. Van Pelt said his footwork, he was asked specifically about his footwork and he said that was kind of up and down. The one play, the throw to Pop was awesome, but you could kind of see maybe he drifts off the center line, to his right and kind of almost invites the pressure, but then he makes a great play to escape back and then makes a great throw. So you just kind of live with the result, but that's probably some of the stuff they might try to clean up there. But Did you wish they called timeout there at the end and let him try to throw a touchdown?
I do and I don't. I mean, yeah, it would have been nice to be like Drake May's leading all rookie quarterbacks in touchdown passes. But it's late in the game. The game's like it would just look kind of
Look bad, and
yeah,
he
it
just
would look
got sacked
bad.
again. It's like
Right. And yeah, he'd get hurt on that play or something. Like I wish they would have run hurry up is what I wish they would have done. Is all right, he got sacked, get back to the line, like let's get one more playoff. I wish would have seen that urgency. Timeout just feels like
yeah.
that's just such a I don't want to say a loser move because it's not, but it's like it's not the preseason. And to be treating that game like a preseason game to that extent, it feels pretty. It would feel pretty amateur.
Yep. Yeah.
No, it would have been cool. Like I'm bummed they didn't, but I also totally understand why they didn't, and I'm okay with it.
Yep. If he threw a touchdown there, that would have just been awesome to have that stat that he leads all rookie quarterbacks with one passing touchdown compared to all the other guys. But yeah, you understand their thought process not to kind of go with that there. So some good, some bad, just again, I think it was like 14 plays or something right around that number. So don't want to make any big, reveals with Drake May or anything, 16 plays, but
yeah,
it was good that he got some experience.
What is crazy, he got 31% of the snaps.
Yeah,
so when somebody looks back on that in 5 years and tries to remember what happened, he played that much of the game. Wow. And he played one drive. They just couldn't sustain anything the rest of the night.
Yep. Oh man. So anything else on quarterbacks or the offensive line? I mean, I know we all want to know when Drake's going to play, but it's so hard to just pinpoint a week now, right? Because you want the offensive line to get to a baseline
I mean, look,
again. But
I guess we got to wait and hear what the deal is with Wallace. But Lowe, they kind of made it sound like wasn't major, at least when that happened. So
and now he gets extra rest. So
right. I still don't think San Francisco. I think there's a chance he plays in San Francisco. I think there's a chance his practice reps increase this week. But Miami's still in play for me. If Lowe and if Lowe and Wallace are healthy for week 5, even if City So's not back and it's Layden Robinson or it's Michael Jordan, if your 2 tackles are healthy week 5, I think you consider it. If those 2 guys are healthy, I think you have that conversation.
Yeah. Then kick Big Mike back inside.
We could also, get the Reese tweet in 10 minutes that Kane Wallace is going to miss a month and a half. And now I don't know where you go from there.
Yeah. Then you're in trouble. Then you probably have to keep, you literally just have to keep Michael Winu at right tackle because you don't have another tackle to play with there. Then Layden Robinson and City So are your guards, hopefully, if City's healthy. So we'll see with him. We'll see with Drake. But yeah, that was my other thing I was going to ask you just on him. I know Gerard Mayo said status quo in terms of practice reps, which was Drake taking that 30%. I think we talked about like before the season started because we were all looking at week 5, and I think we said like maybe this long, Mayo called it a bonus Monday. This could be a time to get some extra Drake May reps in there. Do you think that this could be a time here to kind of amp up his participation?
Absolutely. Even if it's temporary, even if they in the building say he's not starting till, I don't know, off the top of my head, week 10, right? I would still look at this and say, we have a mini bye week. There's going to be more snaps available. We have extra practices. Let's gear the kid up. Even if we gear him back down next week, let's gear him up for this week and see what that looks like. So one way or the other, I think he should be getting more time. The other thing too, that is a factor, and to this person's point here, every time Jacoby Brissett gets hit, he gets up a little bit slower. And for all we're talking about this timeline for Drake May, I'm like 50-50 that it's even going to matter. And I know there's some people
any play, it feels like.
Right. And I know there's some people, I think Andrew Callahan wrote about this today, that say they need to get a veteran quarterback in and are kind of going back to that, what we called the buffer quarterback. Remember that from the summer? Yep. And going back to the buffer quarterback idea. I know some people are going back to that, which I'm not entirely opposed to, but that's a separate discussion. The point being, like, you've also got to be looking at this and saying, Jacoby's taking it on the chin. And there's a real chance this kid's going to need to play before we want him to play. Let's make sure we're not throwing him to the wolves in that regard. So I would absolutely ramp him up this week one way or the other. But yeah, that's the other thing. We just spent, 20 minutes on the Drake May timeline?
It could happen.
It might end up not mattering. I mean, beyond the extent that I don't think he's starting in San Francisco, I would hope it's not going to happen in practice. Like, the guy's wearing a red shirt. The offensive line should be able to handle that, whoever's out there. But beyond that, it may be all for naught.
If you have Bosa lined up across from DeMontre Jacobs in 9 days here, it could happen pretty quickly with Drake May taking over. You could,
and
also
then even after that, I mean, Miami's front.
Yeah. And then we saw Houston after that, what they just did to Caleb Williams. So
yeah, that's true.
It's not getting much easier. You could sign Bailey Zappi back off the Chiefs practice squad if you need your buffer quarterback there. But yeah, who knows? It could really happen at any point here with how Jacoby's been taking it on the chin, and credit to him for keep getting up and playing. But
yeah, by the way, sneaky one of the toughest dudes in the NFL. Like,
yeah.
And can we put him in? And Brian, I'll ask you this because this is more your subject, and I don't want to overstep for you. Where's Jacoby Brissett on like the hockey player scale?
He's up there. There have been multiple times the last 2 weeks where I did not think he was going to get back up, and he's gotten back up.
I know hockey players like to look down on the athletes from every other sport for not playing through injuries. And to an extent, I get it. Like, Patrice Bergeron playing through the punctured lung is the one that always gets highlighted. But I feel like it's got to be at the point where if you're a hockey guy, you're at least looking at that and being like, all right.
Impressive.
Yeah.
Tip your cap.
All right.
He hasn't even been on the injury report yet, has he? So
no, and he's got that cut on his hand too.
Yeah, that was a pretty nasty. It looked like some turf burn there. So that was pretty gnarly. But all right. Quarterbacks, offensive line, that's the big thing. Elsewhere on the offense, they got Pop Douglas involved, 7 catches, 69 yards, I think it ended as, and he had a run for 9 yards. They made it a point to get him the ball, right? He had a couple screens. He had that reverse on a run, which was a nice kind of design play. And they finally hit an explosive play action that was to Pop as well. So there was a priority to get him involved. And you see kind of the difference he does make. Again, even though the offense scored 3 points, you can see the difference Pop Douglas can kind of bring this passing attack when he does get the ball in his hands.
Yeah, I will say, though, a lot of that came in the second half. I have it here. Hang on. 36 yards, 46 yards total in the second half. 20 of those yards on the drive with Drake May, so when the defense had let up a little bit. It's good they're getting him more involved. I think some of that production was kind of empty. It is good they're getting him more involved. But I talked about this when we previewed the game. Like, there's a fine line between making a point of getting your good players involved and forcing the ball to players. Because when you force the ball to players, you handcuff yourself. And it's about getting Pop Douglas involved in the context of the entire offense, not just making him the offense. And I felt like they leaned a little more towards making him the offense last night rather than building him into everything they planned on doing.
Yep. And if you want to talk about like the empty production, wasn't it like 12 yards on like that slant before the Hail Mary throw, or like the defense
I think so, yeah.
Off. So yeah, maybe some empty production there, but good to see him more involved. But yeah, maybe do it a little more naturally moving forward. Although, like, you'd expect him maybe like 1 or 2 scheme touches a game just because he's electric.
Well, so I would say the most encouraging thing to me, I loved that player. They motioned him into the backfield and essentially a pistol. And I forget if it was a handoff or a pitch or whatever,
like
9-yard run. Like
it to him.
Yeah. Like that kind of thing, or the screens, like, all right, do that. Don't just force throw them slants, but some of the creative play design is more what stood out to me.
Yeah. And that was a nice play by Caden Wallace too. He kind of got out and led the way there, but yeah, more of those. And then like you'd expect him to be one of those guys, like running the crossers on the play action. That's a good spot for him. So more of that for Pop. Any other offensive players? I mean, wasn't much to stand out, but anything kind of catch your eye? Or like Ramondre Stevenson, again, just 6 carries for 23 yards, but he fumbled for the 3rd straight week.
Yeah,
he finally lost one. Not great there, ball security wise.
Ramondre's got to work on the ball security. If there is a silver lining for last night for me,
6 touches.
6 touches for Ramondre Stevenson. They kind of, and some of that was because he hurt his hand, but he got a night he'll get a chance to be rested going to that San Francisco game. But the ball security is an issue. He can't be putting the ball on the ground. They don't have that margin for error, especially with a guy that is going to be a very involved part of their offense. Like if you start having to limit him because he can't hold on to the football, you lose a very important playmaker. One other observation, just Jalen Polk continues to look like a good, solid, tough receiver. Made a couple catches last night. Nothing that's going to, mind-blowingly change the offense, but I just am still encouraged by what I'm seeing from him.
Yep. Who do you think? Gerard Mayo said pregame Kendrick Bourne is kind of close. How do you think this receiver room could look when Bourne comes back? Because I know like Tyquan, he drew the DPI, but it just hasn't been much from him. Osborne didn't have a catch last night and didn't look great in the run game. He got pushed around once or twice as well. How do you think this room kind of evolves when Kendrick Bourne comes back into the equation? Hopefully soon.
I think he probably steps in mostly for Osborne. He should step in for Tyquan. I just don't think that's going to happen. You're probably looking at Kayshon Boutte getting cut, maybe going back to the practice squad unless there's, an injury or something. But they need him. They need him because they just need another explosive player. We'll see what he looks like coming off that knee injury, but they could use him. They could really use him right now.
Definitely. All right, so that's the offensive breakdown. Again, just 3 points. Lackluster performance as the pressure kind of takes center stage. Again, we saw Drake May's debut, but we'll see when we see him next because Jacoby sounds like he'll still be the starting quarterback. So over to the defense, but very quickly before we do that, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Factor Meals. And football season is in full force, and sometimes we have little time to prep lunch or dinner as we run to and back from Gillette Stadium before a show, which is why Factor's no prep, no mess meals is the way to go. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready to eat in just 2 minutes, so no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. Factor has everything you need to kickstart a new healthy diet. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. So treat yourself to restaurant-quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon. And head to factormeals.com/PatsBeat50 and use code PatsBeat50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code PatsBeat50 at factormeals.com/PatsBeat50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active over at Factor Meals. All right, to the defense. They missed Juwan Bentley very badly. They could not tackle. Raekwon McMillan and Jelani Tavai were kind of those next two guys up for Juwan Bentley, and they both struggled in the run game to get off blocks. Aaron Rodgers had no issues. Aaron Rodgers looked great, by the way, as well. Even on the runs, escaping the pocket, which they let him out of the pocket too many times. Some of that was Tavai as well, and Rodgers had no issue attacking those guys in the pass game as well when they were mismatched against backs or tight ends. So wasn't a great first game there without Juwan Bentley, who looks like he's out a while, whether it's season ending or he comes back for the regular, like the last few weeks. We don't know yet, but they got work to do without him there in the middle of the defense.
Yeah, I mean, I knew he was going to be a big loss. It was a bigger loss than I thought. The tackling, guys just looked out of place at times. The play recognition wasn't there. It's going to take a lot to replace him, a lot. And even still, they might not get all the way there. They missed him on a number of different fronts last night. The biggest thing was the missed tackles, though, like you said. Late in the game, I think the Jets had one more drive after this. The game was obviously out of hand at that point, but late in the game, they showed a stat on the broadcast, 13 missed tackles for 100 yards.
Yep.
You can't give away 100 yards. You're just not going to win a game giving away 100 yards. So, yeah, that now suddenly I think two guys that come to the forefront that we haven't talked a lot about. Obviously, Raekwon McMillan's still going to play some. They moved Jelani Tavai to more of an off-the-ball middle linebacker role, and obviously the Jets went right at him. That was... You go back to when Jelani Tavai first got here, and we all wondered about what exactly is the plan. He wasn't playing well. They moved him to the edge, and that's where he's been a solid player for them. Like he has been. He's been a solid player for them for the last few years on the edge. Now he's back in the middle. Doesn't look as good. So to get back to my point, the two guys that suddenly come to the forefront are Sione Takitaki And yeah, we're going to do Marte Mapu again. And
Here we go.
can they play like they need speed at linebacker? He is a linebacker. I know they think he's a safety, but he can play linebacker. He's played it. In reality, it's probably mostly Sione Takitaki. That's the guy you're talking about stepping in. And I think he's going to play a significant role when he comes back. But a guy like Mapu giving them 10 to 15 snaps a game on passing downs would be big right now. And will they actually put him in that spot? We'll have to see. But we are, I think we are going to do that thing again.
Well, they might be forced to do it, right? Because they have Duggar and Peppers, obviously, are going to play a lot. Jalen Hawkins has been kind of that third rotational safety. So there's not really room in the safety room for Mapu. And if they're looking at it without Bentley, maybe they say, okay, if we want to get him on the field defensively, it has to be at that second level. So maybe that could be, again, I don't want to say blessing in disguise because you'd rather just have Juwan Bentley out there and have him healthy, but maybe that does kind of force their hand to get Mapu a little bit involved on that second level when he does come back. And then, Taki should have a big role there as well. They're both eligible to start practicing after the San Francisco game. So we should see, we'll get our first glimpse to see if they come back, but that'll help. And the missed tackles was just horrible. You mentioned it was 100 total yards lost on the 13 missed tackles. Next Gen had it, 13. They missed 11 total in the first 2 weeks, and they gave up an extra 34 yards in the first 2 weeks combined. And then they went 13 for 100 last night. So the tackling was not up to par with the usual Patriots defense. I don't know. Some of that maybe was Thursday night, but it just wasn't good enough. And that's got to get corrected. And that starts at the top there with Mayo and DeMarcus Covington. So that's got to improve to begin with. But Rodgers also kind of picked apart their pass defense, which second straight week a quarterback has kind of had his way with the pass defense. I know like the stats look good for Christian Gonzalez one-on-one against Garrett Wilson, even though he did give up a touchdown, which was a great pass for Rodgers. But are you concerned with just the level of play in the pass defense right now? Because they're still letting random tight ends drop 90 yards on them, Tyler Conklin, and it was just too easy for Rodgers last night over the middle of the field and just picking matchups all over the place.
So to me, what really killed them last night, you just said it, matchups. Like I actually thought Christian Gonzalez was fine on Garrett Wilson. It definitely wasn't his best game, but nothing that set off alarm bells. Where the Jets really killed them was 6'5" Allen Lazard, 6'4" Mike Williams working against Jonathan and Marcus Jones and picking those matchups. And Alex Austin's active, and you think, all right, that's a bigger corner. He should give them some help. He gets bullied on an early touchdown. And the issue to me was struggling with bigger receivers, which has been a problem for this team in the past. And if you look at their schedule coming up, they've got Houston. They've got some size in the wide receiver room. Jacksonville's got some bigger wide receivers. They're going to have the Jets again in about a month. The Rams, if their receivers are healthy, are on the bigger side. Obviously, they have to play, but it's a possibility. So that's a game where, like, I'd hope you'd get a little more from Alex Austin to help kind of negate the physical mismatch that you were dealing with. But I think they're going to have trouble with these teams with bigger receivers because that's what Rodgers was doing. He was just looking at where Marcus Jones or Jonathan Jones was and throwing that guy the football. And that's obviously not something you can scheme around. 6'5", 6'5", 5'8", 5'8". Can't coach it. And credit to those guys. They were competitive at times despite that mismatch. But that one play to Mike Williams where Rodgers throws it outside his frame and Jonathan Jones is right on him. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because Williams can reach so far outside the frame to get the football. So, yeah, that's the bigger concern for me. Like the tight ends gashing them, that's going to happen. Honestly, that's part of the whole like beating cover 2 thing. And we can do the cover 2 thing if you want at the end of the show, but
we don't need to do the cover 2.
Well, Mel Kiper's a freaking idiot. And if he wants deep passes, go to Canada. Go to Canada. Like the Canadian Football League, they throw 6% more of the time than they do here. And they're averaging 2 more yards. They average 2 more yards per attempt this season than the NFL does. The Canadian League, the UFL, the Indoor Football League, and Division I college football are all averaging more passing yards per attempt and all throwing the ball at a higher rate than the NFL. If you don't appreciate the game of football and you just want, big plays, my fantasy team. If that's all you're interested in, one, you're not actually a football fan. You're a fantasy football fan, or you're a nerd who just wants the khaki shorts offensive coaches to be right. Go watch in Canada. Go watch the indoor game. Nothing against those leagues. You guys know how I feel. All football is good football, y'all. But if you're going to be a snob about it and say, well, the NFL is a superior product and I can't watch these inferior other things, they don't play right. No, well, but then you can't complain on the other hand that passing's down. Go watch Canada is what I would say to that, which I will. Big game tomorrow night between the Montreal Alouettes and the Ottawa Red Blacks for first place in the Eastern Conference. Tune in. Go for it. Stupid freaking argument. I'm sorry if you can't tell, this bothered me this week.
I also think most of the passing is down is A, it's 3 weeks and most of these guys aren't playing in the preseason, and B, no one can pass protect. Like, this isn't just a Patriots problem. Well, the Patriots are like the class of the problem, but like this is a league-wide problem that offensive line
but
play
it's also
is just down, and you can't throw the football if you can't block.
It's also 3 weeks. It's 3 weeks. Figure it like I've been told, and everybody knows how I get when we start labeling coaches as offensive wonderkins and these generational geniuses. And I've been told that there's more offensive coaching talent in the league than ever. And there's all these revolutionaries across the league, right?
Figure it out.
Revolutionaries can't crack a too high, a thing that's been around since what, the 60s? And I saw somebody say, safeties used to play in the box. And they used to play in the box because they could take the receiver's head off when they came over the middle, and they take that away. You want to get rid of too high? Fine. Give me Rodney Harrison back. But for all of these offensive geniuses I hear about, nobody can crack it too high. Nobody can send a tight end up the seam. Nobody can find the soft spot on the sideline against the cover two zone. What are we doing? And part of the reason I love this so much is we are going to find out over the course of this season who is actually like a good offensive mind that can adapt, because football is cyclical, man. That's what's so great about this game. The offense innovates and has an advantage for a little bit, and then the defense catches up, and then the defense innovates, right? Patriots started playing with the slot receiver, 11 personnel. Defenses got lighter. Everybody started running the ball. 2 tight ends came in. Like, it's all adjusting and readjusting. We're going to find out which coaches are actually like good and real innovators and know what they're doing, and who's just benefiting from a league that completely babies the offense with the rules. And I have a list of who I think is going to end up on which side. If you watch me, if you listen to me, I think you can more or less figure out who's on which list. You want to guess where Mike McDaniel is, Brian? But yeah, that whole thing was stupid. Anyways, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, I'm not so worried about the Patriots getting killed by tight ends, because they've had success for a number of years, basically being like, throw the ball to the tight end. Let the tight end have 150 yards receiving.
They get burned by like these random tight ends, but like that's all the success the offense has.
So I'm fine with that. I'm more worried about as they start to face some of these teams with bigger receivers, specifically receivers, not like, oh, and they have a good tight end who's bigger wide receivers. Nico Collins is 6'4", 222. They're going to face him in a couple of weeks. Again, they'll have the Jets again at the end of October. That's more what worries me coming away from this game.
Kind of goes back. I mean, how much did we talk about this offseason about that third boundary cornerback, right? And I don't even think we really talked about it from a size point of view, but just having a body kind of rotate in there. And it would be nice now if you could have Alex Austin, who, has a little bit more size than Jonathan Jones, but it just, Marco Wilson got that role to start, 2 DPIs in 2 weeks. He moved to the bench, and now you see Alex Austin take it, and, he gets bullied, as you said, right away for a touchdown there against, the bigger Allen Lazard. So that role kind of still trying to get ironed out. That'll be a big thing in that passing defense. So we'll see about that. But yeah, they have some more size coming at them, so they'll have to figure that out. But Keon White was still good. Like 4 pressures. He probably would have had some sacks, but Aaron Rodgers was just getting the ball out of his hands so freaking quick as he does. So he was good. That was good to see. Josh Uche too finally got home for a sack, couple pressures as well. So
he blew a couple contains though. I'm not as impressed with Josh Uche to this point as I think some other people.
I think he just looks kind of more like physically like he did 2 years ago. Like he seems to have a little bit more juice as a pass rusher, but yeah. And I also do wonder if they're, we heard him talk that they want to be a little bit more aggressive. I wonder if they're telling him to just kind of, okay, well, you can pin your ears back and go. Now that's hurt them a few times, but
Well, so that's my thing. I think it's hurting more than it's helping. And if you're going to play that way, you need to be able to produce. And I don't think he's. It's a great way to put it, Brian. Like, I think he's just playing really reckless right now, and it is working at times, but it's burning him more than it's working. And if you want to just be, pin the ears back and go, you can do that. But you got to, even within that, there needs to be a little bit of control. Like I know there was one play where they run a twist on the left side and with Wise and White, and the action just kind of naturally brings the two guys in a little bit. So even if it doesn't get home, it's naturally going to flush Rodgers to his left, because I'm saying they ran it from the left side of the defensive formation.
Was that the long catch and run to Lazard? I think it was.
No, I think he checks it down to a tight end. But yeah, so like it naturally pulls Rodgers. Ujay's on the other side, and he also cuts inside. So now you essentially have all three of your rushers cutting to the inside. And I see why Uche's doing it. That's just the movie sets up, and that's pin your ears back and go. There's not really a plan, but having some awareness of what's going on elsewhere on the field, I think would help there.
Yep. Any other last thoughts defensively?
I mean, defensively, no. I have a special teams thought, but I'm actually kind of with the coaching staff where they kind of said today, just the fundamentals sucked. And I don't know that they approached it poorly. I don't like in terms of like the game plan. I don't know that they really did a ton of things that didn't make sense schematically. It wasn't like last week where I felt like they were spinning the dial too much, getting too cute. Didn't tackle, didn't contain the quarterback in the pocket, and committed a couple penalties. And that's going to burn you a lot more than schematic stuff will. So they're just sloppy. I almost use that as a technical term here. They were sloppy. That's what it came down to.
Yep. I mean, they kept running past Rodgers. Someone says like, and credit to Rodgers, because like
he was really good last night.
If you would have told me like they're gonna get him outside of the pocket and make plays a bunch, like not ideal, but like sure, like let's see how he's moving on that Achilles, because I think coming into the week he's only I forget if it was completed or attempted one pass like outside the tackle boxes. I think it was completed, but he diced them up, on the run last night. So he was awesome. He kind of had some vintage Rodgers to him last night, and credit to him for that. But just again, long week here, so you got to get the fundamentals back together, and that kind of starts with Mayo and Covington there at the top. So special teams, you had to take Bryce Behringer was just awesome. Jeremy Springer said he was the best coverage player with his punts, called him a weapon as well, and he has been all year. He was very good last night, but what was your kind of special teams take?
They allowed another big punt return. And at what was a key point in the game, come out of the half 14-3, they go 3 and out early, but can you back the other team up? Behringer punts the ball 51 yards down to the 13. Brandon School is right there and he misses the tackle. Can't be doing that. They don't have the margin for error to do that. And it ended up being a 21-yard return. Should have been like a -1 yard return if Schooler actually puts the hit on him. It's not an easy play, but Brendan Schooler is supposed to be this, high-level special teams player. That's twice now they've been burned by big punt returns at key points in the game.
Yep. And just Joey Sly made a field goal, 44 yards, so he stayed perfect. That was good to see. But that was special teams.
That did not stay perfect. Come on, what?
Oh yeah, he blocked one.
The whole key sequence last week.
Blocked one. Yeah, how could I forget that? Which they kept. They kept Austin Hooper at that spot.
They did.
I was wondering if they might change that up. They kept him there on that left wing spot.
Well, we can say this: Joey Sly is perfect on kicks that get past the line of scrimmage.
That was going through my head.
Yeah.
There, so.
Okay. There you go.
It's all an improvement from last year's kicking positions.
Yes, that is true.
All right. So, any last thoughts on the game from last night, or just
I think the best thing you can say about that game as a Patriots fan is it's over. And I don't think, like I said at the beginning, could there be more games like that this year? Yes. Will that be every game? No, I don't think that's entirely who this team is, but you see who their floor is. And that's where the concern comes from. And you hope that, the coaching can elevate them above that floor regularly, because that's what it's going to come down to. This is what I said. Remember what I said the first day we met with the coaches back in like January, that I think everybody in the building gets what this year is and understands what this team is and the place they're in. and that they're going to have to punch above their weight to be in just about any game they're going to play. Getting that is one thing. Actually putting the actions behind understanding it is another. And I think that's just where they're at. Last night was that team playing to its level. I don't know that the coaching staff gave him a boost last night. Coaching staff's going to need to give him a boost if they're going to be in games. And first short week, I get it. They did not handle their first short week well. I would say they failed that test.
Yep. This is like a good kind of real big first test for Gerard in this sense, right? Like that it kind of just bottomed out for you. Now you have some time to readjust here, and you're going to play a Super Bowl contender. I know they're pretty banged up out there in San Francisco, but you kind of got to get things back on the track here.
Well, I'll say this, like, regardless of what happens next year, first Thursday night game, or they only play one, but like going to the Thursday night game, this is going to be a major talking point, is it not? Look what happened last year when they had a short week. Like, that's just the kind of thing we're talking about.
Yep. All right. So that's your Patriots thoughts from the game last night. One more thing, you want to do a little college football before we go?
Sure.
And before we do that, big college football game in Boston tomorrow night.
Yep.
Billy O, BC, Red Bandana Night, under the lights. And you can go with Game Time because Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite team play live even easier. And Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Looks like tickets for tomorrow at Alumni Stadium, just about $100 right now. So pretty good get-in price for, again, Red Bandana Night, 8 p.m. kickoff. You can go tailgate up there in Boston as well. And head to Game Time, again, to make sure you get those tickets for the lowest price guaranteed. And you can also check out their seat views, all in pricing, and, of course, Game Time Picks, which makes it even easier to save on your sports tickets as well as your concert, comedy, theater, or any other tickets you are trying to buy. So take the guesswork out of buying all your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, so we do have, Billy O, they should beat Michigan State tomorrow night.
They should, yes.
Michigan State's not a great powerhouse there in the Big Ten, but that's always a good game, good energy there, Red Bandana Night. But anything else you're looking forward to in week 4 of the college football slate?
It's a pretty good slate. It's definitely better than last week. Last week was probably the worst slate of the year, I would say. We're still building. Still not my favorite slate. Tennessee, Oklahoma should be fun. That game is tomorrow night. That's kind of the game of the week. Utah, Oklahoma State. They're calling it the Unk Bowl. It's 2 of the oldest quarterbacks in college football. The combined age of the start. So it's Cam Rising for Utah and Alan Bowman. So Cam Rising, Alan Bowman for Oklahoma State, both 7th-year seniors. They're a combined age of 49. The combined age of the professional quarterbacks in the Colts-Bears game, Anthony Richardson and Caleb Williams, is 44. So veterans going at it. And that should just be really fun. Oklahoma State, one of the best offenses in the country, up against a really good Utah defense and Kyle Whittingham, who's a really good defensive-minded head coach. So that should be a fun game. I'm looking forward to that. I know there were a couple others. I kind of have my list here.
Michigan USC, right?
I don't care about that game. Michigan sucks. Michigan sucks. It'll be fun watching them get rolled at the big house. But do you think that's going to be a watchable game, Brian, for like 60 minutes?
Probably not. Although we got an orgy. We got an orgy in the big house.
That
now,
is true.
So I don't know. Maybe
for people, explain that one, Brian, before we start getting emails.
Sure, that's they're made a quarterback switch to it's Alex Orgy, right? That's his first name. So new quarterback.
J-I. I'll tell you what I'm looking forward to.
Want to RG3 ourselves there, but
I'll give you a little sickos one. Iowa at Minnesota. Floyd of Rosendale. It's the name of the rivalry because the winner gets a bronze full-size pig trophy. Really even rivalry. I think Iowa's won one more game, and they've been playing since the 1930s, at least for the trophy. They've been playing before that. But so last year, this game, Iowa won, I think, 13 in a row. close, low-scoring game, of course, Big Ten West. Cooper DeJean returned a punt for a touchdown with like a minute to go to put Iowa up 17, would have been 17-12 with the extra point. But the refs overturned it because they said that, so when he's running over to field the punt, because it was like a low line drive punt and it bounced, sometimes you're off balance, you like wave your arm to kind of steady yourself. They said that constituted a fair catch, even though that's clearly not what it was. And they didn't think it was in real time. Nobody did, because the entire play was run all the way through. Again, he houses the punt. It was an unbelievable return. That comes off the board in Iowa. Just nasty scene. Minnesota hangs on to win 12-10. Heated rivalry. You're coming off of that game last year. It should be a close game. They're two pretty evenly matched teams. Iowa maybe has a little bit of an offense now. Maybe. So there's that. You get your guy Ariante Irsi in that one as well. Sneaky fun game at 7:30 on NBC.
Yeah. All right. Another week of Arch Manning in Texas.
They're playing ULM. I don't care. He's going to light up ULM. Oh my God, Arch Manning against the worst team in college football. I don't care. I'm still not an Arch believer until proven otherwise.
I was going to say pay attention to Kelvin Banks, but yeah, it's Louisiana Monroe, so I don't know how much stock you want to put.
It's one of those games where if Kelvin Banks has a really like one penalty, one pressure, you're like, oh, I don't know about that.
Does UCLA have anyone edge rusher? Because that's Will Campbell's matchup.
I actually meant to look this up.
I didn't watch Will Campbell last week, but didn't people say he was struggling, or did you say he was struggling?
He had a couple individual plays where he kind of got South Carolina's pass rushers are awesome.
Yeah.
And he had like two plays where they got the better of him. There was only two pressures, but they both happened to be like in the first 10 minutes of the game when everybody was watching. So I think people saw that. Oh, this guy sucks. Turned it off. Right. And also because South Carolina was blowing LSU out early, missed a good comeback if you turn that one off. But after that, he was good. And if that's his worst game of the year, he had a hell of a year. Let me put it that way. If that's his worst game of the year, he had a hell of a year. But I do think that you are going to see those plays again when we get to the draft. And whether it's Kelvin Banks people or people who want the Patriots to take a receiver, you're going to see those plays come up in the replies like, well, what about this? He's not so great, is he? Like, I'll show you, it's nobody. There's no perfect prospect. And yeah, he missed a play or two.
Yep. All right.
But I will say this. The gap through, and we're barely in a conference play. That was Campbell's really only marquee matchup, I believe. Florida State, I guess. And he played well in that game. He played well. He had penalties. He played well. Banks, Texas still really hasn't played anybody. He was good against Michigan. All right. So I guess they each have one marquee.
Well,
but like,
when does Tennessee play Georgia? Because that would be if we got
Tennessee. You mean Texas? We got
Mikal Williams. No, doesn't Texas play Georgia?
Yeah, you said Tennessee.
Oh, yeah, I meant Texas. Because if we got Kelvin Banks versus the Georgia front and Mikal Williams, that would be awesome.
That game is October 19th.
Okay. So he should
it's
be
fine.
bad.
There's Williams. Very little overlap between the LSU and Texas schedules, even though they're both in the SEC, which is annoying because we're not going to get a ton of what they look like against the same guy. But I will say the gap between Banks and Campbell is not nearly as big as I thought it would be. It's really not. I'm open. The door's still open to me being a Kelvin Banks guy by the time we get to the end of this thing and we start the pre-draft process. So that's not to say I'm right now. I still think Will Campbell's a better player, but it's up in the air. There's a lot of football left to be played. I'm barely penciling that in. Yeah, it's still very much a take in development.
Yeah, I haven't watched enough. I've only really watched them in live time. I haven't went back and watched them, but
that too.
Banks' athleticism just really kind of interests me. He looks a little more athletic than Will Campbell, but still a long way to go for both of those guys in a lot of games. And then the whole pre-draft process, which is always a fun time with them. So,
we'll talk about that plenty.
Oh yeah. So we'll wrap it up there. Again, Patriots fall to the Jets. They get their butt kicked 24-3 on Thursday Night Football. We will be back sometime early next week. I don't know. We don't have it settled yet. Monday, Tuesday, we're going to kind of take a step back and do a crossover with Mike and Tayler and kind of do a Q&A. So we'll have something out on Twitter, probably asking for questions. So you guys can just follow Patriots CLNS on Twitter, and all of us at excuse me, at I am Brian Hines, at Real Alex Barth, to submit those questions. And then we'll let you know when we're going to go live, of course, as always. So make sure you're subscribed to the Patriots Press Pass on YouTube here as well. And you can also head over to 985thesportshub.com to read Alex's coverage of the game yesterday. And you can head to patspulpit.com to read our Patriots coverage over there as well. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in with us today. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you guys next week.